Thank you, everyone, and thank you, TEDx, for inviting me. I am, and believe me, truly honored and excited to be here. My name is Ish. I am 28, and I come from Brussels, Belgium. When I was first asked to come here, I knew immediately what I wanted to talk about. I wanted to talk about stories and the importance of storytelling, because I believe that behind every story lies a great power, and deep down inside, I know that that power can change the world. Now, probably some of you are wondering, how can a story change the world, right? Sounds maybe like a childish dream. Well, let me first start by explaining you how a particular story changed me. And it's a cultural story. Now, what you need to know about me before I start the story is that I'm Belgian, but I am also Moroccan. And us Belgians, we eat with the left hand, but us Moroccans, we eat with the right hand. When I was 7 years old, I walked up to school, and my mother had subscribed me for a warm meal at school. We always had the option of coming with our own sandwiches or being catered a warm meal. So I walked into the cafeteria, and I started eating, and my teacher walked up to me, and she said, "Ish, you need to eat with your left hand." And so I did, and I started eating with my left hand. Now, when I returned home for dinner, I was eating, and my mom walked up to me, and she slapped me on my left hand. She said, "Ish, you need to eat with your right hand." So I started eating with my right hand. Now, the next day, I walk up to school, it's lunch. I come into the cafeteria, I start eating, and now it's my teacher who walks up to me, and she slaps me on my right hand. She said, "What did I tell you yesterday? You need to eat with your left hand." And I ate with my left hand. Now, that same evening, I returned home, and I always liked to be at table with my brothers and my sister. It was fun. And then suddenly, my mom came with a plate of food. Now, I start sweating. I didn't know if I had to eat with my left hand, with my right hand. Now I look around, and everyone at table saw me very confused. At that moment, it's my mom who took the time to tell me this story. And it's a religious story, because Moroccan traditions are very much tangled with religious traditions. So she told me this story. It's a long story, but the finality of it is that it is said and told that when you eat with your left hand, you're allowing the devil to consume a meal with you. Now, believe me, as a 7-year-old, you don't want to chill with the devil next to you. So from that day on, to this day, I still eat with my right hand. Now, I go back to school, and I walk into the cafeteria, and I saw everyone eating, but it hit me at that moment, because I finally understood why everyone was eating with the left hand and why I was eating with the right hand. You see, I needed that story that my mom told me. I needed that story to understand about cultures, to understand about differences. And I'm sure my teacher needed the story even more than I did. It would have helped her understand that I wasn't playing around with her, and it would have saved her from slapping my hands every single lunchtime. But that was my first experience concerning the power that lies behind the story, because I got so much information out of it. And I would like to continue to talk about that power, because now I'm 14 years old. And as a 14-year-old, I already had a really strong opinion about how I felt and how I looked at the world and my environment. But as a 14 years old, you're not expected to talk about those things. You're expected to be a 14 years old, a kid. You expect to just have fun and play with your friends and go to school. But that was the story that I wanted to tell, and I just didn't know how to. And that's when I met dance. Yes. Well, actually, I don't really believe that I was the one who found dancing. I really think it's that power behind that story that I wanted to tell that found it. Now, like I said, when I was 14 years old, I already had a really strong opinion about how I looked at the world and how I felt. But as a 14 years old, you're not expected to talk about those things. You're just expected to play with your friends, have fun, and go to school, right? And I was told where to step, how to move, where to sit, and how to stand. And eventually, how to walk through life. But still, I was looking for ways to tell that story of that kid that I was. Now, I was born in Belgium, but raised by Moroccan parents. And I walked through life with one Oriental leg and one Western leg. Now, for a long time, I really, really stood unbalanced in life. And it's funny how when two worlds collide, a new dynamic is created. You see, I was always surrounded by many differences in my life. And while people use those differences to create distances between each other, I was trying to use those differences to bring us together. Now, I was a smart kid, but I was very, very, very impatient. Everything needed to happen fast, faster, faster, fast, 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 fast. But then I learned this very, very, very important lesson, that some journeys are better experienced together. You see, dance taught me to stand up for myself and eventually share my story with all of you. I'm getting too old for this. And that's what stories are all about. Stories are about sharing information. They're about learning about the world we live in. They're about learning about ourselves, but they're also about exchange. And I believe that a story can do it better than anyone else can. See, we've all had this conversation about any subject with a friend, a family member, and a colleague. And while you're having this conversation, you say something that might be useful to that other person, but for some reason, whatever you are saying, it's not reaching them. And the reason is, it's because all of you, and I, we have this thing called the ego. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Why should you listen to him? Who is he? Don't listen to him, Ish. Those voices, they create this huge wall around you. And that's when a story can help. That's when a story can make a difference. Because every single person is in competition with another person. We all trying to be a better human being than the person next to us. But no one is in competition with a story. You are not in competition with a book. I am not in competition with a movie. And we are not in competition with a song. And when you're not in competition, that's when your walls come down. And when your walls come down, that's when a story can reach you. And when a story can reach you, that's when the magic happens. Now, I've experienced this magic a lot of times in my life. And recently, just a few days ago, see, we have all heard and seen, I am sure, what's been going on here with the crisis with the refugees, right? Now, I've always had a lot of empathy, but I never did something about it. You know, a lot of times you see stuff on television or you read about it, and you always have this feeling of, I have to do something, I have to move, but for some reason you end up not doing anything because you don't know how to, because you get lazy, or for 1,000 other excuses. Now, only a few weeks ago, I was at home, I was watching the news, and then I saw that a lot of refugees had arrived in Brussels and this camp emerged. Now, for some reason, I immediately stood up. I reached out to all the people that I knew. I was like, please come in, help, contribute in any way or shape possible. And a few days later, we were all working as volunteers. And I have to say, in all honesty, it was not really usual for me. It was not really common for the person that I am to do such a thing. And here it comes, the magic that I told you about. Because only a few days ago, I was at home cleaning up my room, and I stumbled upon this book that I had read. It's called What is the What from Dave Eggers. I don't know if you all have read it. But as I held the book in my hand, and I started thinking about the story, and it's a really heartbreaking story of what refugees in Africa had been through. Now, as I thought of the characters, the story that I had read about 8 months ago, I started feeling some really strong and powerful emotions. Now, these emotions were exactly the same ones that came up when I was watching television, the news. That's when I realized it was not a sudden change of heart that made me go and act and go to the camp and help. It was that power of that story that had changed me 8 months ago without me even realizing it. It had changed me, it had made me another person. And that's what stories do. They teach us about the world we live in, but they also teach us about ourselves. They give us a better understanding of who we are. And I've always believed that if a mirror reflects how you look on the outside, a story reflects who you are in the inside. And let me give you a clear example of that. We have all seen movies, right? Everyone watches movies. Now, you watch a movie about any subject, and after the movie or after a particular scene, you're left with really strong thoughts or emotions. But you experience them in a very personal way, because most of the time you'd have that conversation with someone else, but this time you're having the conversation with yourself. Your walls are down. It's very personal. And when your walls are down, that's when a story can reach you. Just like this following scene, I am sure has reached all of us. The sun had reached its highest point in the sky. It's silent, and the kingdom is asleep. Now you have this little boy, right? He's playing in the valley, all by himself. He's happy. Now while he's playing, suddenly he hears this worrying sound coming from behind him. So he turns around and he sees his eye is facing eye to eye with a storm. Now the storm takes him, poof, and he's fighting against the storm. And as he's fighting against the storm, he has thoughts of his father. He's his hero. He's wondering, what is my father going to think about this? Now he's fighting the storm, and suddenly he sees a branch. He jumps on it, and he hangs to it like his life depended on it. Now suddenly the branch is cracked, and he falls back into the storm. Now he's fighting against the storm. He wants to stay alive. But most importantly, he's thinking of his father, because his father is his hero, and he wants to be like his father. So he's fighting, fighting, fighting. Now, just at that moment where he can't do nothing anymore, and he can't save himself, his father comes out of the blue into the storm, picks him up, and fights the storm with him. Now his father puts him at safe bay while he's being taken away by the storm. The small boy is looking at the storm. Daddy, 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 where are you? Where are you? And suddenly his daddy jumps out of the storm and hangs to the wall of the valley. He's climbing up. Now you have this little boy who looks at his father. He's really happy. Look at my father. He's my hero. He's so great. I want to be like him. He's safe. And his smile turns into a frown when he sees the body of his father in a free fall, falling down. And the storm is gone. And now you have this little boy who runs down and he goes to his father. He's not moving anymore. And he's like, Daddy, Daddy, wake up. Wake up, Daddy, wake up. Stop playing, he's saying, referring to a game they always used to play in the morning when his father pretended to be asleep. Now his father is everything. But his father is not waking up because he's not asleep. And that's when Simba realizes that his father, Mufasa, the Lion King, had died. Now that's an intense scene. It's an intense scene. What is interesting is that scene, just like that one, can so easily bring difficult subjects such as the relationship between the son and his father, death, life, love. So easily brings us to the audience, to us. But what I love the most about that scene is that after you watch it, however you feel about that scene, it says so much about who you are. It says so much about how you feel about life, how you feel about love, how you feel about your own father, how you feel about the relationship between the son and his father. It says a lot about that. And you get to rediscover yourself, because we all have so many things we want to say. We have such a huge opinions about so many things. And it is those stories that can help us unlock those emotions and those thoughts and those ideas and those opinions. When you think about it, stories can bring subjects and ideas to you that your environment or even yourself might not be able to bring. It's like us here. We are gathered here, but at the same time, we are missing out on the millions of experiences in the outside world. But tomorrow, those experiences can turn into stories, and those stories can inspire us, just like our story here today might inspire them. And I have talked a lot about my own experiences about stories. And I would like to end with the experience of a lady that I had met about 2 years ago. See, 2 years ago, it was my first time that I got to go to the Antwerp Book Fair. I had to go sign my book, my first novel, Heart Heart. Great book, by the way. So I went, and I was very, very nervous because I had never been there. Never, not as a kid, never. I was excited because my first time was as an author. Now, the only thing you think about when you go to a book fair like that as an author, I was hoping someone would come and sign a book. You don't want to be the guy by himself on his island with a table and a chair and nobody comes to you. So when I got there, I was really excited because I had a few people that came up and I started signing the book. Now suddenly, out of the blue, and I really mean out of the blue, and so out of the blue that sometimes I'm wondering if it really happened, but out of the blue comes this old lady, and she walks up to me. Now she arrives in front of me, and suddenly she takes my book and she starts reading in it. And she reads a page, and she starts a second page, and you know, reading a page or two takes time, right? So you have all these people wondering, like, what is she doing? She's supposed to cue, but she's an old lady, so no one speaks, of course. So everyone is waiting, and I'm just looking at her, and then she closes the book and she says, Ish, your writing reminds me of my writing. So I got interested. I'm like, oh, you're an author. She's like, no, I'm not an author, but I write poems. I was like, wow, interesting. It's like, how, what happened in your life, or what made you write poems? And she said, that's a story you don't have time to hear. Now, when she said it was a story I didn't have time to hear, that's when I knew I had to make time to hear it. She was too mysterious. So I took the time. I was like, sorry, people. Old lady first. And I was like, okay, what's the story? She said, when she was 17 years old, she wanted to commit suicide. For some reasons that I don't know, she didn't have or found enough reasons to take part of this life. So she woke up in a small apartment in Ghent. It's a rather known city in Belgium. She had breakfast, she took a shower, she got dressed up, and then she walked out of the apartment for the last time. Now, her plan was to go to the tramways, and they are across town, so she walked over there. Now, as she walks through the city, she passes a small library. And as she passes the library, she remembers one of her friends or one of her girls at school that always said, you need to read this book. There's this great book you need to read. It's so interesting, it's so beautiful, so inspiring. Now, for some reason, she said, you know what? I'm going to walk in, I'm going to read a few pages, and then I'm going to move on with my plan. So she walks into the library. She gets the book and she starts reading. A page, a second page, a third page, fourth, a chapter, second chapter, third chapter. Now she gets interested. So she says, I'm going to come back tomorrow, and I'm going to keep reading. But by the time I finish the book, I'll move on with my plan. So she came a second day, a third day, a fourth day. Now, after 5 days, she had finished reading the book. And in the time lapse of one book, she had found enough reasons to take part of life. She got interested again. Her fire started burning again. So she walked out of the library, and instead of taking a left to the tramways, she took a right. She went back to her apartment, took a pen and a paper, and started writing her first poems. And she has been writing ever since. Now, what I'm trying to say is that if a story was able to change her, if stories changed me, and if stories can change all of you, then I believe stories can change the world. Thank you very much.